The porcelain mug slipped through my fingers, a slow-motion betrayal, and shattered against the stainless steel basin of the sink. The sound was a gunshot in the quiet. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet that comes after the bomb has gone off. A silence so dense you can feel it pressing against your ear. I stood there, my hands still suspended in the soapy water, watching the brown dregs of yesterday's coffee bleed into the suds around the broken shards. It was the third thing I'd broken that week. 3 weeks, 21 days since I'd uttered the words that unmade my life. I didn't need to look at the calendar on the fridge. I felt every hour of them in the hollow space behind my ribs, a cavity that used to hold something warm and certain. The little house on Cypress Lane, my sanctuary for 14 years, had become a museum of my own bad decision. Every creak of the floorboard was an accusation. Every patch of afternoon sun on the living room rug only highlighted the emptiness. My name is Alara Vance, and I am the woman who threw her husband out of his own home. The dawn light was leaching the color from the kitchen. I pulled my hands from the water, dried them on a towel that smelled faintly of mildew. I'd forgotten a load in the washer, and wrapped my arms around myself. I could still hear the echo of my own voice, brittle and sharp as the china now lying in pieces at the bottom of the sink. Asterisk, get out. You don't belong here anymore. Asterisk, I had said it to Leo. Leo, who had brought me chicken soup when I had the flu that first winter. Leo, who had patiently taught me how to prune the riotous rosebush by the front porch. Leo, whose name alone was on the mortgage paperwork downstairs in the filing cabinet, a fact that had only begun to tattoo itself on my consciousness in the last few days, its implications a cold, spreading stain. It didn't start as a cataclysm. It started on a perfectly ordinary Thursday, the kind of day so mundane it feels eternal. Leo had come home from the university library, where he worked as an archivist. He always brought the smell of the place with him, a comforting scent of old paper, leather bindings, and the faint, clean tang of preservation chemicals. He'd kissed my temple, his lips cool from the autumn air outside. Something smells good, he'd murmured. Shepherd's pie, I'd said, nodding to the oven. Your favorite? He'd given me that small, private smile, the one that crinkled the corners of his eyes, a smile I realized now I hadn't seen in months. Not since the tension with Finn had begun to thicken, a slow poison fog seeping into every room. Finn, our son. My son, really. Leo had come into our lives when Finn was 10, a wary, fatherless boy with my own stormy eyes. Leo had been the steady ground, the patient voice, the calm harbor. But somewhere in the turbulent waters of Finn's 20s, that steadiness had begun to feel, to Finn, like judgment, and to me, by some terrible osmosis, like a failure. Finn slouched in just as we were sitting down, 24 years old. All angles and simmering discontent in a worn leather jacket that smelled of clove cigarettes and someone else's apartment. He didn't greet us, just grunted and slid into his usual chair, his eyes already glued to his phone. Long day? Leo asked, passing him the bowl of peas. A peace offering. Whatever, Finn muttered. The universal anthem of his generation. He shoveled food into his mouth, the blue light of his screen reflecting in his pupils. The meal was quiet, punctuated by the scrape of cutlery and the low murmur of a news anchor on the TV in the next room. I tried. How was the job search? A dismissive shrug. Pointless. They all want, like, experience and references. It's a scam. Leo took a slow breath. I knew that breath. It was the precursor to reasonable suggestion number 4. The community center is still looking for part-time assistants for their after-school program. You're good with kids, Finn. It could be a foot in the door. Finn's eyes flicked up, a spark of contempt in them. Supervising snot-nosed kids for minimum wage. That's your big idea. No thanks. He looked at me. Mom, can you pass the butter? It was a tiny thing, but it was a line drawn. He asked me, not Leo. He made Leo the outsider, the irrelevant commentator, and I, like a fool, passed the butter, completing the circle, excluding my own husband. Leo fell silent. He finished his meal, his gaze fixed on his plate. The air grew heavy. Then, the ping, a single, crystalline notification from Finn's phone. He glanced at it, and his entire body stiffened. His thumb froze mid. The color drained from his face, leaving his acne scars standing out like little red islands on a pale sea. His eyes, when he lifted them to me, were wide with a terror that seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. Mom, his voice was a strained whisper. You need to see this. My heart gave a hard, painful thump. Finn, what's wrong? He pushed back from the table, the chair legs screeching on the hardwood. He didn't go to his room. He came around to my side, thrusting the phone toward me, angling it away from Leo. Look, it was a screen full of emails, password reset requests for his bank, his email, his social media, all time-stamped over the past 48 hours, all with the little identifier, IP address, our home network. My brain stuttered, trying to process. What is this? Someone's hacking me, he hissed, his breath hot and anxious against my cheek. From here, his eyes darted toward Leo, then back to me, full of meaning. He swiped to another screen. Text messages from an unknown number, truncated, ominous. Asterisk, always watching. Asterisk, asterisk, you're not safe. Asterisk, asterisk, tell anyone. And asterisk, ice flooded my veins. I looked up at Leo. He had turned in his chair, his brow furrowed. What's going on? It's you, Finn said, the whisper now gaining volume, trembling with a convincing edge of hysteria. He pointed a shaking finger. You're doing this? Leo's face was a perfect blank of incomprehension. Finn, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why would I do that? Because you hate me. Finn's voice cracked. A masterful performance. Because you've never thought I was good enough. Because you're a controlling, secretive creep who's always on his computer, and now you're trying to screw up my life. Leo, I said, and my own voice sounded foreign, tight with a panic that wasn't mine but had been implanted in me. Explain this, Ilara. I can't explain what I didn't do. He stood up, his movements slow, deliberate, as if trying not to startle a wild animal. This doesn't make any sense. Finn, let me see the phone. No. Finn clutched it to his chest, taking a step back, putting me between him and Leo. He looked at me, his eyes swimming with manufactured tears. Mom, I'm scared. He's been so cold lately, so distant. What if he's not who we think? The word was a hook, set deep. It forged an instant, primal alliance, mother and son, blood, against the outsider. All the nebulous worries of the past. Months Leo's quiet absorption in his work, his occasional sighs of what I'd interpreted as disappointment, the gentle space that had grown between us in bed crystallized around Finn's accusation. It provided a narrative, a terrible, simple narrative. The kind, steady man was a facade. Underneath lurked a petty, Texavy monster trying to sabotage my child. Leo saw the shift in my face. I watched his expression change from confusion to disbelief, then to a dawning, horrible understanding. Ilara, you can't possibly believe this. Why would he make it up, Leo? My voice rose, fueled by a defensive heat. I don't know. But he is. Leo's calm finally fractured, a flash of anger that only cemented Finn's story. He's lying. Finn flinched, a perfect, victimized recoil. He pressed his face against my shoulder. He's gaslighting you, Mom. He's trying to make you doubt me. I'm scared for you. That was the trigger. For you, my maternal instinct, always a raw, oversensitive nerve where Finn was concerned, exploded into a white-hot blaze of protective fury. Every sacrifice, every struggle from the years before Leosh, every fear for my son's fragile future, converged into this moment. I saw not my husband of 14 years, but a threat, an enemy in our kitchen. I stepped forward, putting myself fully between Finn and Leo. I felt huge, powerful, righteous. You don't get to call my son a liar. I snarled. The look he gave me then, it wasn't anger, it was a profound, grief-stricken weariness. It was the look of a man watching his life's work burn. He is lying, Ilara, and you're choosing to believe him. Get out. The words left my mouth, clear, final. Leo blinked. What? Get out of this house. The power surged, intoxicating. You don't belong here anymore. Silence, absolute, crushing silence. Finn's quiet sobs behind me were the only sound. Leo stared at me. I saw the man I loved recede, like a ship vanishing into a fog bank. What remained on the shore was a stranger. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He just gave a single, slow nod, as if confirming a long-held suspicion. He walked to the back door, took his waxed canvas jacket from the hook. He picked up his wallet and his ancient, brick-like phone from the counter. His keys were in the little ceramic bowl by the door, next to my spare hair ties and a pile of loose change. He opened the door. A gust of wind rushed in, smelling of wet earth and decaying leaves. He didn't look back. The door clicked shut. The spell broke. The power evaporated, leaving me cold and hollow. Finn's sobs stopped as if a switch had been flipped. He pulled away from me, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. In that unguarded moment, before he could recompose his face, I didn't see fear or relief. I saw something flat, satisfied, a chess player who has just captured the queen. "It's okay, Mom," he said, his voice already returning to its normal timbre. "We're safe now." He walked past me, picked up his phone from the table where he'd dropped it, and headed upstairs to his room. A moment later, I heard the thump of bass from his stereo, not the music of a traumatized victim. The music of celebration. I was left alone in the kitchen with the dirty dishes and the expanding void, where my certainty had been. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The police called the next morning. A polite, detached Officer Mullins, a welfare check, following a complaint about threatening behavior and possible digital harassment. "Did Mr. Vance leave voluntarily?" he asked. I glanced at Finn, who was hovering nearby, nodding emphatically. "Yes," I said, the word ash in my mouth. "Do you feel safe now?" "Yes," I repeated, the lie curdling my stomach. "And the residence on Cypress Lane?" he asked, his tone casual, bureaucratic. "Is that in both your names?" A memory, distant and gauzy, surfaced. Leo at this very kitchen table, a sea of refinancing papers between us. My credit, back then, was a ruinous landscape, the aftermath of my chaotic years before him. I'd been ashamed. Asterisk, just put it in your name, Leo. It's yours anyway. You're the one with the good job. I don't want my bad history touching this place, he'd argued. It's our home, Alara. We're a team. But I'd been insistent, proud in my self-flagellation. "Just put it in your name." "It's in my partner's name," I told the officer. "Just his." "Yes." A pause, the soft scratch of a pen on paper. "Okay, Ms. Vance. We'll note your statement. You have a good day." I hung up, the plastic receiver slippery in my hand. Just his. The cord of doubt, fine as a spider's thread the night before, now thickened, coiling in my gut. Finn was suddenly buzzing with energy. "We should change the locks," he announced, scrolling on his phone. "I know a guy. He can do it this afternoon. Maybe we should just talk to Leo," I ventured, the words feeling dangerous. His head snapped up. "Mom, are you insane? After what he did, he's probably just waiting for you to get weak so he can worm his way back in and make our lives hell." He launched into a story about a friend of a friend, a woman who took back an abusive controller, and the spiral of stalking, financial ruin, and terror that followed. He was persuasive, painting a vivid, horrifying future. He made my doubt feel like a betrayal of him, a failure of my maternal duty. So, I said yes to the locks. I forwarded the receipt from the locksmith to my email. A concrete, tangible action in a world that was starting to feel like quicksand. The sound of the new deadbolt clicking home was supposed to feel like security. It felt like a prison gate slamming shut. Days oozed past. Leo didn't call. No texts, no emails, no letters. The silence was a physical weight. I'd expected pleading, negotiation, anger. This absolute nothingness was worse. It was a verdict. Finn, however, bloomed. He had friends over loud, laughing strangers who left empty beer cans on the porch. He ordered takeout every night with a slick new credit card he flashed with a careless pride. "Perks from a new gig," he said vaguely when I asked. "Online stuff. You wouldn't get it." I threw myself into cleaning, seeking order. I attacked the basement, a territory that had always been Leo's domain. Among the boxes of Christmas decorations and old textbooks, I found the filing cabinet. In the folder marked house, behind the utility bills and the insurance packets, was the warranty deed. By my eyes scanned the legalese, finding the important lines. Asterisk grantor grantee. There was my signature, my loopy, hopeful signature from over a decade ago. And above the line labeled sole owner, clear as day, Leonard James Vance. The cord in my gut was a rope now, pulling tight. The house I had ordered him out of, the walls that now seemed to be closing in on me, belonged to him, solely, legally. I had been a guest, a beneficiary, who had suddenly claimed squatter's rights and changed the locks. That evening, I confronted him. Finn was on the couch, engrossed in a video game, the glow of the screen painting his face in lurid colors. "The house," I said, my voice sounding calm, detached. "It's only in Leo's name. He didn't pause the game, so he'd never throw us out. He's too soft, especially now, with the police report." "What police report?" The officer said it was just a note for a welfare check. Finn snorted, his fingers flying over the controller. "Same thing. It's on his record now. He tries anything. He looks guilty, predatory. He's not that stupid." The cold, calculating efficiency of it stole my breath. Finn, those messages, the login alerts, I need to see them again. He paused the game finally, turning to look at me with an expression of profound exasperation. Mom, I deleted all that. It was toxic. I had to, for my mental health. Why are you doing this? Why are you taking his side after everything? His side. The ultimate indictment. I backed down, the old habit of capitulation too strong. But I started watching, really watching. I saw the packages delivered, a new gaming headset, designer sneakers, a sleek laptop. I saw the sly, secret smile that played on his lips when he thought I wasn't looking. I remembered, with a nausea that rose in my throat, the pattern from his teenage years, the money missing from my purse, blamed on a brick, the forged teacher's signature on a failing report card, the fender bender he'd caused, spinning a tale so convincing the other driver had ended up apologizing to him. My son was a gifted storyteller, a virtuoso of plausible fiction, and I had been his most devoted, most credulous audience. The storm inside me was no longer about Leo's imagined betrayal. It was about the living, breathing betrayal, sitting in my living room, eating pizza, paid for with God knows what, in a house that wasn't mine. I found the courage one rain-slicked afternoon. I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling so badly, I misdialed twice. He answered on the third ring. Ilara. Just my name. No warmth, no ice, a simple identifier. We need to talk. In person. I think I've made a terrible mistake. A long, static-filled pause. I could hear the faint sound of traffic. An office murmur. My attorney, Mara Thorne, will be in touch regarding the disposition of the property. Please direct all communication to her. Asterisk attorney. Asterisk the word was a physical blow. Leo, for God's sake, it's me, Finn. I think Finn lied. Another pause. Heavier, saturated with something that felt like pity. I know he lied, Ilara. I knew it 3 weeks ago when I stood in our kitchen. You're just now catching up. The line went dead. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, the phone a dead weight in my lap. You're just now catching up. The words weren't cruel, they were just true. He had been living in this devastating reality for weeks. I was a tourist, finally arriving at the scene of the wreck. The formal eviction notice arrived 3 days later, delivered by a uniformed process server who wouldn't meet my eyes. Asterisk exclusive occupancy granted to Leonard J. Vance. Vacate the premises within 30 days. Asterisk Finn erupted when I showed him, he can't do this. That bastard. We'll fight it. We'll get a lawyer. We'll tell them he's abusive, that he threatened us. We will pack, I said, my voice quiet, stripped of all emotion. The fight was gone. All that was left was the grim mechanics of consequence. He stared at me, his face a mask of betrayal. You're siding with him, after everything. I knew it. You're just as weak as he always said you were. He moved out that weekend. His new online gig wealth afforded him a downtown apartment with a rooftop view. He took his new possessions and left without a goodbye, slamming the door so hard the framed photo of the three of us at the beach. Happy fiction fell from the wall and shattered. I packed alone. 14 years of a shared life condensed into a depressing parade of cardboard boxes. I was an archaeologist of my own folly. I found relics, a pressed maple leaf from our first hike together, a silly, sentimental birthday card he'd written, a mixed CD labeled for rainy day songs. I found the deed again, my own foolish signature, a monument to my insecurity. On the last day, I sat on the bare floorboards of the living room, waiting for the property manager Leo had hired to come and change the locks again. The doorbell rang, a cheerful, normal sound. It wasn't the manager, it was Leo. He stood on the porch, the afternoon light behind him casting his face in shadow. He looked older, thinner. The lines around his eyes were deeper. He held a small, unsealed cardboard box. My heart stopped, then hammered against my ribs. I couldn't speak. I didn't come for a scene, he said, his voice low and even. I came to return some things that are yours, and to say something. May I come in? I nodded, stepping back. He walked into the emptiness, his footsteps echoing. He placed the box on the floor by my feet. I glanced inside. My grandmother's handwritten recipe book, a bundle of letters from my sister, tied with a faded ribbon, the small, painted music box that had sat on my childhood dresser, things I'd forgotten in closets and drawers. He had remembered. He had sorted through the wreckage and salvaged pieces of me. He looked around, his gaze taking in the blank walls, the empty spaces where our furniture had been. There was no triumph in his face, only a profound sadness. I loved you, Ilara, he began, and the past tense was a knife twist, deeply, and I loved Finn, as best as I could. I tried to be the ground under his feet when he insisted on living in an earthquake. But love isn't a blank check for destruction. It isn't permission to believe the worst of someone without evidence. It isn't an alliance formed against reason. He paused, choosing his words with the same care he used to handle century-old manuscripts. You chose his chaos over our peace. You chose the dramatic, self-serving lie over the quiet, complicated truth we had built. Every time, this house, he gestured to the empty room. It was just a shell. The real eviction happened long before I filed the papers. You evicted me from your trust, from your partnership. You made me a stranger in my own life. Tears were streaming down my face, silent and hot. I had no defense. Every word was true. I won't fight you for anything else, he continued. What's in the box is yours. The rest, it's just stuff. I want you to be okay, Ilara, truly, but I can't be part of your life anymore. The cost is too high. He turned and walked back to the door. He stopped on the threshold, one hand on the frame, but he didn't look back. Goodbye, Ilara, and he was gone. I sank to the floor beside the box, the silence of the house complete once more. But it was a different silence now. It wasn't accusing, it was accepting. It was the silence after the last word has been spoken. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I moved into a small south-facing apartment across town. It had beige carpets and a view of a parking lot, but the locks were simple, and the only history it held was my own. The silence here was mine to fill. Finn calls sometimes. There is always a crisis, a lost job, a speeding ticket, a girlfriend who took all his money. His voice is a familiar melody of blame and need. I listen. I say, I love you. But I no longer reach for my wallet. I no longer rearrange my truth to fit his fiction. The cord, though stretched and frayed, is still there. He is my son, but I am no longer his accomplice. One afternoon, maybe 6 months later, I was in a coffee shop near the old university, reading a novel. I looked up, and through the steam-fogged window, I saw him. Leo. He was at a small table by the bookshelf, with a woman. She had kind eyes and silver streaks in her dark hair. They weren't touching, but they were leaning in, talking. She said something, and he threw his head back and laughed, a real, unguarded, full-throated laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. A laugh I hadn't heard in years, a laugh I had helped extinguish. A pang went through me, so sharp and clean it stole my breath. It wasn't jealousy, it was recognition. It was the sight of a light I had chosen to switch off, now shining warmly for someone else. He had found his peace, the peace I had rejected as boredom, as judgment, as insufficiency. I watched for only a moment longer. Then I closed my book, gathered my coat, and walked out into the crisp afternoon. The sun was low, casting long, dramatic shadows. The weight of my bag was familiar on my shoulder. The sound of my own footsteps on the pavement was a steady, solitary rhythm. I had lost a house. I had lost a love. I had lost the story I told myself about my family, about my own goodness. But, as I walked, alone, toward an apartment that held no ghosts, I felt something. It wasn't happiness. It was something more fundamental, excavated from the rubble. It was a quiet, unadorned awareness, the weight of my own keys in my hand, the path of my own choosing under my feet, the terrifying, fragile, and utterly authentic burden of a life that was finally, unequivocally, my own.